Hello, everyone. I am Ben Johnson, and this is the Perpetual Chess Podcast. Perpetual Chess is a weekly interview show where top chess players, authors, content creators, and accomplished amateurs discuss their careers and share stories and chess improvement tips. Perpetual Chess is a part of the Blue Wire Podcast Network, and we'd like to give special thanks to our presenting chess education sponsor, Chessable.com. For more information about the show, you can go to perpetualchesspod.com. But without further ado, let's get to the show. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Perpetual Chess. We've got a special episode for you here this week, 2022 FIDE Candidates Preview Extravaganza double feature featuring Grandmaster Robert Hess and then Teimour Zimmermann of the Chess by the Numbers blog. First up is Grandmaster Hess. Robert takes it player by player, discussing each player, sharing things he's noticed about their playing style, assessing their chances, telling a few stories, having a few laughs. We've got about an hour straight on each player one by one with Grandmaster Robert Hess. After that, we catch up on general chess matters. Robert is a return guest, but I haven't talked to him since episode 40 in 2017. So we spent about 45 minutes catching up on other chess-related matters. And after that, we are joined by Teimour Zimmermann of the Chess by the Numbers blog, a blog that I always enjoy reading. Ty provides an analytical perspective using his ELO-based model, and Ty shares what his model forecasts for this match, what probabilities it assesses, the chances of each player, and shares a few interesting nuggets. So be sure to stick around after the Hess interview to hear what Teimour Zimmermann has to say. This is a long and detailed preview episode, so we are releasing it 10 days before the Candidates starts so that y'all will have plenty of time to listen. As for what the Candidates is, I suspect many of you know. It's the tournament that determines who gets to challenge the world champion for the world title. That match will take place in 2023. And of course, the current world champion is Magnus Carlsen. And this year there is the added wrinkle that we don't know for sure if Magnus Carlsen is going to defend his title. In fact, he has said it is more likely than not that he will not defend his title. So we don't spend a ton of time discussing that angle on this particular episode. We've discussed it before. We've discussed it again. But as a standalone tournament, the Candidates is entertaining in its own right. So this one is just discussing the competitors in the tournament. The format of the tournament, of course, is it begins June 17th. It runs through July 4th. It's what's called a double round robin, which means everyone plays against everyone and they play each other twice. The highest cumulative score, of course, is the winner of the tournament. In the event of a tie, there are rapid tie breaks in place. So the winner will be determined over the board. The match will be broadcast on all of the major chess sites. The games are at 3 p.m. Madrid time, which is 9 a.m. New York City time. Adjust for your time zone accordingly. Time control, 120 minutes for the first 40 moves, 50 minutes for the next 20 moves, then 15 minutes for the rest of the game with a 30-second increment. That's a complicated way of saying the games are really long. Draws by mutual agreement are forbidden before the 40th move, so they are encouraging long games, fighting chess. The Perpetual Chess coverage will mostly be business as usual, meaning we will continue to release our weekly evergreen episodes every Tuesday. In those episodes, even during the Candidates, you won't hear any discussion of the Candidates, but we will have 2 bonus episodes for you. Friday, June 24th after round 6, and Saturday, July 2nd after round 12. We will give you a quick rundown on what's happening in the match. I will try to line up a guest or two to join me for those, as I did when covering the World Championship. And of course, there will be plenty of discussion of the FIDE candidates here on this pod when it's over. The chess, the intrigue, the historical impact, and of course, the inevitable discussion about whether the match will take place. And of course, one thing to keep in mind as you all track this match is if Magnus decides not to defend his title, then it's highly likely that FIDE will try to arrange a match between the top 2 finishers of the candidates. So again, so much historical intrigue. Really looking forward to seeing the chess and everything that comes along with it. So I hope you all enjoy this episode. As always, timestamps for the topics discussed are in the show description. And remember to stick around for Ty Proust Zimmerman at the conclusion of the Hess interview. So let's get you to the conversation with Grandmaster Robert Hess right after we hear about what's new from our friends at Chessable.com. Listeners, it's finally here. Shereshevsky's Endgame Strategy, one of my favorite chess books of all time, is getting the Chessable treatment, revised and expanded, and the video presentation is done by none other than 2018 U.S. champion Grandmaster Sam Shankland. And guess what? They have a free 1-hour video that you can check out on the principle of two weaknesses done by Shankland himself. So that's just one of the many offerings from Chessable.com. They also, of course, are constantly dropping new opening, endgame, tactics courses, all of which feature their proprietary move trainer technology to help you remember what you learn. So the links for anything mentioned, as always, are in the show description. So be sure to check out Chessable.com for Endgame Strategy and all of their other new material. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Perpetual Chess. We have a great guest joining this week, a many-time Scholastic champion, a 2010 Sanford Fellow. He tied for second in the 2009 U.S. Championships, member of the 2010 U.S. Olympiad team, a Yale grad who studied history but then found his way back into chess, and of course, these days, best known as a popular chess.com commentator, Twitch streamer, coach. He is a return guest here on the pod, and he will be covering the Candidates Tournament alongside I am Daniel Wrench and GM Daniel Naroditsky for chess.com when the Candidates rolls around, and that is one of the primary topics we will be discussing. But without further ado, let's welcome Grandmaster Robert Hess back to the show. Hey, Robert, what's going on?
Well, first up, Ben, thanks for having me again. And second of all, thanks for talking about my playing career because, I don't really touch those pieces too often these days. And thank you for reminding people that once upon a time, I had some successes.
Yeah, I did have to go back to 2010. But then again, Robert, later on in this show, we're going to discuss your 2019 over-the-board exploits. So I know that when you dust off the chess pieces, you can still make a good move or two.
Yeah, I do remember every now and then how the pieces move. So thank you for reminding everybody.
Yeah, no, it's quite an accomplished player and awesome commentator as well. And the primary focus, at least early on here in this conversation, Robert, the candidates. So you've had a busy week. You're joining me here on Friday, May 27th. And of course, the candidates begins on June 17th in Madrid. And just before we recorded, Robert, began recording, you informed me that you will be going to the candidates and covering it live. So when do you take off from Madrid?
Yeah, I take off June 13th, I believe. So I get there on the 14th, get a few days to help with setting up, making sure that everything's in order and preparing for the event because it's going to be the highlight of 2022 in many ways, determining who Magnus Carlsen faces or chooses not to face. But either way, it's going to be a fun time for sure.
Yeah, I can't wait. I mean, this is going to get me unnaturally excited, and it's still weeks away. And this will come out June 7th. So listeners hopefully will pace themselves as they listen and as the tournament approaches. But Robert, one question I have for you, because you and your team over at chess.com, you guys did an awesome job on the World Championship, and that's a different type of event. But how does your preparation compare for the candidates as opposed to the World Championship?
Yeah, it might be even better this time. I know that's setting a high bar because a lot of people enjoyed our World Championship coverage, but we have a team that we're very happy with. I'm going to be commenting alongside International Master Elmira Skripchenko. For the most part, Danny Wrench will be there. Danya will be joining as well. So it's going to be awesome. And what's the preparation like? We dive into the stats. We try to create graphics that people will appreciate. Just make it as entertaining in addition to as educational as possible.
Okay, excellent. And you've had a crazy week. I mean, the I Am Not a GM is ongoing. Youth Speed Chess Championships, many tournaments. So how much time are you even getting to think about the candidates with it still 3 weeks out here as we record?
It's a great question because I should be thinking more. Of course, I'm traveling in a few weeks. Wardrobe needs to be up to date and nice because the event itself in Madrid is played in the Chamber of Commerce. And I'm pretty positive I will be commentating out of there in one of the very beautiful rooms that they have. So, there's that logistical concern. But in terms of preparation, I'm kind of been always thinking about the candidates, right? I cover the events. The I Am Not GM Speechless Championship has been awesome to cover. It's really one of the best events out there. But in the back of my head, and I guess this is getting back to being a chess player in my heart of hearts, it's like, well, we're about to see Fabiano Caruana, Hikaru Nakamura, Ding Liren, Alireza Firouzja, Ian Nepomniatchtchi, Jan-Krystof Duda, Teimour Radjabov. Who am I missing in this list? There's one player I think I just left off. Apologies in advance.
Did you get Rapport, maybe?
Richard Rapport, who just transferred federations. Excuse me.
You're on top of it, yeah.
I'm on top of all the news. So, yeah, I'm really excited for that. How could I not be?
Yeah, I can't wait as well. And Robert, what I thought we would do, again, even though you haven't done your deep prep yet, I have a feeling you can talk about each player. And of course, here on this weekly chess podcast, this is not the first time we've talked about the candidates, believe it or not, Robert. But this is our official preview episode. So what I've mostly been doing is like try to get someone like Ben Feingold on the record about like who he thinks going to win. And, you know, he can obviously speak extemporaneously about the tournament. But this time I want to give listeners a little bit of info about each player, because obviously those of us who can will be sweating the game. So I've got a fun fact prepared against each player, some biographical information, and then Robert, hopefully you could share a few thoughts about each one as well.
Sure thing.
All right, let's do it. So we're going to go in reverse rating order, and we're going to begin with the aforementioned Jan-Krystof Duda, who of course is 24 years of age, rated 2750, number 16 in the world, from Poland. I've got a fun fact for you, Robert, or first you could tell me what comes to mind when we discuss Duda.
You take the lead. Your
okay,
guess,
here's the fun fact for you. He has over 2,000 chess books, was given 500 by his chess coach, his childhood chess coach, Andrzej Ehrlich. And he said that The Miraculous World of Chess was his favorite book. And he read it so often that he memorized not only a lot of the facts from it, but the pictures as well.
Did you just say 2,000?
2,000 chess books. He's only 24.
That is ridiculous, but more power to him. It just shows what a tremendous student of the game he is.
Yeah, you know, and we talk sometimes, like Jesse Cry likes to bemoan the death of chess books. And I always say here on the pod, like, you know, they're not dead on Perpetual Chess. They might be dead for everyone else, but here they're going strong. But to see that one of the younger players in, this global, obviously world-class competition with the World Championship match on the line is such a chess bibliophile. I was heartened to hear that as well.
I love hearing that. I mean, I have not been a voracious chess reader myself. I do read a ton, just they don't have to be chess books. But to hear that Duda, since childhood has loved the game that much and continues to pursue not just playing, but also researching and reading and learning about his great predecessors, to steal probably some of the books on his shelf. It's really cool to hear that.
Yeah, very likely. And what would you say about his chess game, Robert? And what do you think about like how good are his prospects? Because obviously he's the lowest rated, but all the ratings are close, and he's also among the youngest. So I feel like he can't be discounted.
Yeah, I'm not somebody who would ever bet on chess, but I've seen some of the odds, and he tends to be at the bottom of those lists. And that makes sense given the rating, given his lack of experience in the candidates. But I think that Duda is a tremendous player, right? You don't end Magnus Carlsen's unbeaten streak by accident. That's not something that anybody can just do. I think that Duda, after winning the World Cup, he was kind of all the rage for a bit. But the World Cup, how to judge that and then compare it to the candidates, they're very different things, right? Short sprints when you're playing 2-game mini matches against players. And that's not to take anything away from the legendary. He's 24, but his age may belie the legendary status he now holds. He's fantastic. And we just saw in the quicker time controls, he can fight with the best of them. He won that Grand Chess Tour event in Poland. So he's not doing so badly for his national image. I mean, he must be a hero at this point. But in terms of the candidates themselves, I have a hard time seeing him win. And that's not because he's not an exceptionally strong player, but he lacks the experience in a grueling 14-round, double round robin against every single top player, not named Magnus Carlsen for the most part, that you can think of. So I just have a hard time envisioning his victory, but he's certainly going to play a part because he can beat anybody in the field.
Yeah, I've always enjoyed his playing. And on the topic of his exceptional skill in the faster time controls, I was happy to see that this time around, there will be a rapid tiebreak if they're tied at the end of the tournament. Even if there's multiple people tied, they have it mapped out in advance. So props to FIDE for that. And that, of course, if Duda were to reach a position where he's tied at the end, like depending on who he plays, that could be an advantage. Although, all these guys are so good at all formats of chess that it's, anyone can do anything at any point. So next up, Robert, we've got Teimour Radjabov. He is 35 years of age, rated 2753, number 13 in the world, of course, from Azerbaijan. You ready for the fun fact, Robert?
Let's go.
I tried to go deep on the fun facts, but this one you might know. His dad was a chemical engineer who went to the same chess school as Kasparov at the same time in Baku.
Did not know that. I learned something new every day, and I love trivia, so thanks for that.
All right, yeah, and feel free to drop these without attribution when you're announcing, Robert. So, but yeah. So when I interviewed Ben Feingold a couple weeks back, Robert, he said that Radjabov is the one person that he would be really surprised if he won. Do you agree with that hot take?
I think it's a universal feeling. Radjabov does not play much chess these days, and when he does, he has a tendency to make draws. Now, do I feel like his over-the-board play is unfairly maligned? Yeah, a bit. We have to remember that Radjabov hasn't only been playing chess for the last couple of years, right? Historically, he has been a tremendous fighter. And there's a reason he dropped his rating all the way below 2,700 and worked his way right back up to 2,750 plus. There's a reason he won. Speaking of the World Cup, like we just did for Duda, that Radjabov won the World Cup, beating Ding Liren in the final. He qualified for the previous candidates. He didn't play for health and safety concerns. And we know that whole story now, that saga. But as it pertains to this specific event, do I think that Radjabov will win? No, he has the lowest odds, in my opinion. He just hasn't shown anything that resembles top few level play. And maybe he has it in him. It's not impossible, but we have not seen anything that would indicate that he is really aiming to play for the World Championship, because we really just haven't seen much of him except in streaming and online events. So I could not possibly see him winning the tournament. If he won, would I, be astonished? Okay, he's a great player, but it's super unlikely.
Yeah, and also the oldest, which, it's an unfortunate truth, but being 35, this is a long tournament. So, energy and as you say, motivation is more of a question for him than some of the other players. But you never know. I mean, he might be looking at this as his last chance, and certainly has an outstanding long-term record as a competitor, stretching back to the 2000 decade. So you never know, but I agree overall with your assessment.
And I'll say that as it pertains to an older guard winning a candidates, there's a certain legend named Viswanathan Anand who did that not so long ago. So maybe there's a bit of a truth to being older in the field against some of these really strong and up-and-comers, or just people who've been around for a while at this point. But there's still a chance.
Yeah, and Vishy still making noise to this day. Just amazing. What a player. What an inspiration for an old guy like me. Not quite as old. Age 34, Hikaru Nakamura, rated 2760, number 11, from the United States. I feel like all the fun facts have been unearthed about Hikaru. But what I unearthed is, this is a quote from Hikaru: "A juicer is whatever you want it to be. The juice is the juice." I'm not, as regular listeners know, I watch Twitch here and there, but I'm not watching it all the time. And every time I watch Hikaru, I'm dazzled by a few things. I'm dazzled by his facility with drawing the arrows on the chessboard. Of course, I'm dazzled by the speed and accuracy of his combination, and I'm dazzled by the random slang that he's come up with, such as juicer. So that was my fun fact regarding Hikaru, because I was like, as I was researching him, I should look that up finally. What on earth he's talking about when he talks about juicers?
Well, many of his fun facts, as you were saying, have been unearthed because he is talking for his stream many hours a day. So yeah, it's hard to come up with a unique fact, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolute legend, though. And obviously, this has been a hot button topic here on the pod. But Robert, someone who knows Hikaru well, battled him over the board while you guys were both coming up. How do you assess his chances?
He is the most difficult player for me to pinpoint. So he is taking this event seriously. That's abundantly clear. He is taking time off from his stream. He is doing, quote unquote, secret preparation for the candidates. And that's no surprise, right? This is a huge opportunity for him. And we've heard interviews where he said he may even be a better chess player now than he was in the past, despite the fact that his rating at one point was number 2 in the world. And I think 28-16 at his peak, if I'm remembering that number correctly. And so that would be surprising to hear, right? Well, how could he possibly be better now with the lower rating? But he doesn't have that pressure, because if chess doesn't work out for him, and we know there isn't that much money in chess, sure, for the top group, they can make a very good living. But after that, well, it's tough. You're not getting invites. There's just not a huge prize funds in many tournaments. So he doesn't have to worry about all that. And that's a huge psychological benefit, because if he scores last place in the candidates, he goes back to what he's been doing, streaming successfully. And as it goes for his over-the-board play, I think, there are several buckets of fans right now. There are the Hikaru fans who started watching during the pandemic, have followed chess because of his streaming, and we love those people and we're happy to have them, but maybe they don't have the entire history of not just Hikaru, but of chess. And so they see him win the FIDE Grand Prix series and they say, well, he won the FIDE Grand Prix series. He must be a favorite. He's in the best form. He's doing all this. But that's, again, another short sprint, right? He did fantastically well. I don't want to take anything away from him. But if you look at the ratings and the players and the candidates, yes, Hikaru got through Levon Aronian. He got through Andrei Yesipenko. He got through these great players who stood in his path. And that's not taking anything away from him. And apologies about the siren. As anyone who's watched me commentate before, they sometimes happen. Welcome to New York City. But those events, it was a bit of a mixed bag, right? Those 6 round robins. Then you got into 2-game matches where there was going to be rapid and tie breaks. So I don't know quite how to judge him. I was impressed with his play, but I also can't forget that he was one move away from being eliminated, right? Grigori Oparin had him dead in the water. Like, Hikaru was completely lost. I was commentating on that. And on one hand, you can credit Hikaru's resourcefulness that we all know and appreciate, because he is as resourceful as a defender as you could ever see. Historic level defense. But that wasn't really his defense. That was just Grigori not finding a knockout blow that was really obvious for a player of Oparin's caliber. So it could have gone differently. And that's not to take anything away from what Hikaru has accomplished, because he dusted off, the pieces. He came back. He did everything you could ask for of him. He won the Grand Prix cycle. And he could only play 2 events. He scored a win and scored a second place. I mean, really, that's exceptional. But one game, one move could have changed the entire outcome. So I don't know where he currently fits in this field in terms of being a favorite, or should I suggest that he's one of the bottom half? I really don't know. Even as impressed as I've been in all of his online play, winning the Rapid Chess Championship now 3 weeks running, winning the Speed Chess Championships against all the top players in the world. So I could go on, but I feel like it's a story that will write its ending come the end of the candidates, and one right now that I could not possibly pen.
Yeah, well said. I mean, certainly, and lends an air of unpredictability. And Robert, I mean, as a fellow sports fan, you know that's just the way competitive events unfold. It's always one bounce of the ball, it's always, and then you write the narrative as if it was preordained,
I would say that's true every year except for this one, because the NBA playoffs have been a nightmare to watch. It's like a 15-point victory for one team, a 15-point victory for the other. No close games. So it's not so much one bounce of the ball here, but in the candidates, I think that one single move could change the entire tournament.
Yeah, and as you say, certainly altered Hikaru's fate. And yeah, I mean, I think, to me, there's compelling aspects to anyone winning the candidates, but of course, like, the best headlines would be either he or Firouzja, who we will get to in due time. And I just love the sort of overarching narrative where I feel like Hikaru was like basically retired. There's like, it's like the one last heist narrative. He's like the retired, jewel thief who had his feet up at the beach, and then his friend comes and pulls him and is like, come on, do it one more time. And now he's really working at it, and he's really taking his craft seriously, and obviously all the talent and accomplishments in the world. So yeah, something I'm definitely looking forward to. And of course, he plays Fabiano in round 1 since they're both from the United States. So certainly have that game in particular circled.
Yeah, and a few notes about his retirement, quote unquote. Like Hikaru was at some points very vocal with it. I think he leaned into the joke, but he never claimed to be retired. He doesn't accept all the invitations he used to, because when I'm sure you're making the type of money that he is, you have some priorities. But I feel like people just decided that he was retired for him. And he was like, okay, I'll lean into it, because if people are going to underappreciate me or going to underestimate me, now that's favorable for me psychologically. And chess at its core can be a very psychological game, especially when we're talking within the margins of super grandmasters at the best of the best level, where one inaccuracy leads to an uncomfortable position, and then that leads to a loss. I mean, we saw Anatoly Karpov become a world champion, and the amount of games that I've gone through of his where you're just like, where did his opponent go wrong exactly? Right. It seemed like it was fine 2 moves ago. Now I'm starting to feel a little uncomfortable, and now I'm starting to feel like you're lost, even though the eval bar says, it's only like 0.3 of a pawn better. So, Hikaru is a really fascinating case study, and we'll see how the candidates go for him. But I really enjoyed hearing his fellow competitors talk about him, where they say Hikaru is the most practiced at anybody. Yeah. Because while most people have said, blitz isn't good for you, yada, 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 he's playing these blitz events and blitz games against really strong opponents. He is working on his tactics every day in those blitz games. He's playing the rapid tournaments where he has done extraordinarily well. And it's not like he's just playing against the random hustler in the park with, of course, Mark Jackson voice, all due respect to them. He is doing it against Magnus Carlsen, against Fabiano Caruana, Levon Aronian. You name a player, they're there. So I think that for Hikaru, he has been practicing this whole time. It's just a different form than a different medium than everybody is used to. But just because he's not locked away in a room with an engine and a second for 12 hours a day does not mean that he's not putting in hard work. And again, it remains to be seen if that is going to lead to the ultimate success of winning the candidates. And you were touching upon this. I think that the media, the masses, they are rooting for Hikaru because, that storyline is unreal. Hikaru Nakamura, the biggest streamer on the planet, and Magnus Carlsen, the best chess player on the planet. That just would have all the journalists salivating.
Yeah, no, but you make a fair point that I could have been projecting a bit to say that he's retired. Certainly, that's for him to say, not for me to say. And Magnus himself was very complimentary, as you alluded to, his peers being very complimentary of what he's still been doing and what that can do for his chess game. So yeah, obviously we've gone on for minutes because he's such a compelling figure, and it will be fascinating to see how he performs. Next up, Ian Nepomniatchtchi, 31 years of age, rated 2766, number 7 in the world currently. And the country he's representing is FIDE, because he can no longer represent Russia, which I shouldn't really laugh about. Obviously, what's going on in Russia's attack against Ukraine is reprehensible. And, the whether or not players from Russia should be playing is, I feel like it's far afield from previewing the candidates, but certainly we've discussed it previously and will again on the podcast. And Jan, of course, signed the letter speaking out against the war. Chess-wise, my fun fact is, and he's another one, I found it a little hard to find a fun fact because like everything's about his video game, Dota, which has been discussed enough. But I did find an interview with Maria Emelianova where he mentioned one of his first chess books was Alexander Alyekin's Best Games, and he devoured it, which, those who've seen him play, not a shocker. What do you think about Nepo, Robert?
He is one of the difficult ones to assess because most people recall his world championship match against Magnus and then immediately cast him aside as somebody who's not worthy, which is ridiculously unfair to such a talented player like Ian Nepomniatchtchi. He's been held up as perhaps the most talented player in his generation, and Magnus Carlsen is there, so it's hard to say anybody is more talented. And I really don't like diving into those arguments, but Jan is exceptional. He plays really quickly, so he puts pressure on you on the clock in addition to over the board. And we'll see what kind of motivation he has, because the prospects of facing Magnus, if he agrees to that world championship match, does that look like fun after you just suffered that defeat? Maybe you're hungry for revenge. But as it goes for, his recent chess, I mean, he kind of just is hanging in there, right? He knows that the Candidates is coming up ever since he lost the match. So it's hard to really take anything away from recent games, because as soon as he qualified for the match against Magnus by winning the previous Candidates, which was very impressive, by the way, maybe that is the biggest testament to his chess career and success. But also, before that, there wasn't really much in the way of top-level victories. So some may see it as an aberration, a fluke. I think that Ian Nepomniatchtchi is ridiculously strong. I would be surprised if he won again. I think that the odds makers are unfairly, they're harsh. So he might be a good pickup if you're into sports gambling, or in this case, chess gambling. But yeah, I find it very unlikely, though. I got a fun fact for you about Ian Nepomniatchtchi, is that, if I'm not mistaken, Fabiano Caruana has never beaten him in a classical game.
Really? Did not know that fun fact. Wow. That is surprising. But yeah, I agree overall with your assessment. Again, Feingold recently really tapped to liking his chances to win. I have to admit, I'm a bit more bearish. Jakob Aagaard's been outspoken about the fact that Nepo, and he doesn't do as well in longer tournaments. He may have benefited from the first Candidates being split up. This one will not be split up. We got a 14-round grind coming up. So one of the many things to watch. I mean, he does benefit from, I believe it was Rustam Kasimdzhanov has spoken about how, like, the mere act of playing for the world championship just is like a huge turbo boost to anyone's chess strength, because you get this team behind you, you get all this opening prep, and you level up basically your level of seriousness about the game. So that's not something to be discounted, but I just feel like he's a bit variable in terms of, like, we don't know how motivated he is compared to some of these young up and comers.
Yeah. I think that's a very important point. That Fabiano Caruana, who I'm going to talk about soon, he's made the same point, that you don't know what it's like until you sit in the chair and you are facing Magnus Carlsen day after day after day, with the months and months of preparation, with all that hard work that goes on behind the scenes. So Jan undoubtedly is a stronger player for having played that match, but he also is squaring off against all these other strong players. And yeah, it's, he is, for me, middle of the pack. Like, I could see it going either way for him. And as you said, the tournament being split up in 2020/2021 was huge for him. He lost game 7, right?
Yeah.
Maxime Vachier-Lagrave defeated him, tied him in the standings, and took over because of the head-to-head record. And then the tournament stopped. And that was huge for him, because Jan can be a very streaky player. And if you're coming off a loss, people like to talk about tilt. That could lead to more losses. The tournament stopped. When it resumed, Jan caught fire. He ends up winning the event. And so it could have been a different storyline for sure had the event continued and gone 14 rounds straight.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. He's another one. So the odds you alluded to, and Robert, by the way, listeners will have already heard this, but we're going to do a numerical segment with Chess by the Numbers, and I'll be sharing all the betting markets after we're done our interview. That'll be a separate segment. But the odds you alluded to are 6%, which it is kind of like, it is shocking when you see it. You're like, 6% for the guy who won it last time. But then when you look at everyone else, it's not like, no one else seems highly that overvalued to me personally. So yeah, that's why betting is difficult. Next up, as the aforementioned Richard Rapport, 26 years of age, number 8 in the world, rated 2764. And I have here in my notes that he represents Hungary. But as you alluded to, Robert, we're recording here on May 27th. And the news just broke that he apparently is transferring federations along with his wife, Jovana Rapport, to Romania. So again, this will be old news by the time this pod comes out, but did that surprise you, Robert?
That's a kind of a big question, and I guess you didn't expect this reaction. So I don't know Rapport personally, so I couldn't be surprised in either direction. But the way the chess world has gone, where top players transfer federations to secure some lucrative offers. I think we're not very foreign to that here in the United States.
Right.
So I'm not judging anybody for it. I already mentioned earlier that it's not exactly the most profitable game, chess. And so if you can find a partnership, a sponsorship, whatever it may be that suits you and your family's needs, I am not going to be one to judge. Do I think it's strange? It's difficult to say because some people are very much in the Olympic spirit that once you play for one Olympic team, you should never be able to play for another. I don't think that chess follows. FIDE tries to follow the Olympic Committee and all that stuff, but I'm saying chess as an atmosphere, as a profession, doesn't exactly follow, for example, professional football, soccer, right? Where players from all over compete for teams from all sorts of different countries' leagues. So, and there's just much more money, right? There's a salary. So without that in chess, where your income hinges on your performance, I don't at all judge or blame players for doing what they feel is right for themselves. Is it odd? Sure. It's not something you see every day, but just because something's atypical doesn't mean that it's wrong. And I don't think we can hold a moral standard in this case, but I was interested more than anything. I don't like to judge before I sort of get more facts. And I don't know too much about Rapport personally. He seems to be a private individual along with his wife, and I respect that. And I think, as we're going to talk about the chess, he is an awesome chess player to watch. I've always loved watching his games.
Yeah, very creative player. Definitely excited to see him out there. And yeah, I think he's got decent chances. And as for the transfer thing, he's been outspoken in the past about feeling not that supported in terms of like his ability to compete at an elite level, his ability to make a comfortable living. So if transferring is what it takes, then I'm all for it. The fun fact I had before this news broke was that his dad said that he introduced Rapport to chess as a child because he had trouble focusing at school, which kind of surprised me because classical chess does not it requires focus, if nothing else.
But you can see his creativity, right?
Yeah.
He is an outside-the-box thinker. One of my favorite games of his is, I don't want to misquote the year, so I'm going to go with 2016 against Levon Aronian, where he made his move rook h1 check, just giving up his rook. And it was a winning tactic. But it was awesome. Like, I don't think that maybe more than a dozen players in the world would even think about that as a possibility. And he didn't just think about it. He intuited it. He calculated, and he won that game with the black pieces against Levon Aronian. And Rapport, like Radjabov, he dropped a lot of rating at some point. Right? He was young. He was 2750, 2760, whatever the exact number was. And he was breaking into the top. And then his rating plummets. He goes to something like 2675, which is obviously an amazing chess player. But we're talking about Rapport here, right? We're not just talking about a GM on the rise. We're talking about somebody who was at the precipice, about to break through to the top 10, get every invite you could ever ask for. And then I don't know what happened, and I don't want to, suggest anything. I have no idea, right? I just don't know. But he always kept that playing style. Sometimes it was a little bit maybe too risky, and it can backfire. But you see it time and time again. He is an extraordinary player. He is so creative, and he is a joy to watch. So every time he's in a tournament, I'm watching because he is just electric.
Yeah, and the fun fact that I shared came from an old ChessBase article, and they had a few other interesting nuggets in there. One, he became grandmaster at an even younger age than his compatriots, or at least former compatriots, Peter Lecaux and Yuta Polgar, who obviously are singular prodigies, some of the fastest developing prodigies in chess history. And number two, in comparing his game to Lecaux, I believe it was one of his trainers, to Polgar, said that with Polgar, the work came first and then came the talent. But with Rapport, the talent was just like off the charts, which gets to what you're alluding to in his tremendous OTB creativity. And I'll have to look up that rook h1 move, Robert. I probably saw it at some point, but I don't remember it off the top of my head. So I'm going to put a link to it in the show notes and check it out myself when this interview is over. Next up, a certain gentleman by the name of Fabiano Caruana, 29 years of age, rated 2782, number 4 in the world, playing for the United States. Fun fact, as a child, he had the same trainer as Grandmaster Robert Hess for a period, although I have another fun fact, but did want to get that in there.
Shocking. Well, I didn't know that. Wow. Oh my gosh. This whole time I never
Small
knew
world,
that
yeah.
he had the same coach as me.
Yeah, your fellow New York native for a while there. But my actual fun fact is grew up listening to Metallica and Led Zeppelin, but more recently got into hip hop like Kendrick Lamar and Killer Priest. So Robert, I don't know if you guys were sharing living space when you guys were covering the World Championship together, but certainly spending a lot of time together. Was Fabiano bumping a lot of Killer Priest at that time?
Well, considering the early wake up time, we didn't really have too much time to bump rap, but I know, he's into rap, and Fabiano is a fascinating guy who I know extremely well. I had the pleasure of being his second at the World Cup last year, which was a short-lived experience with tons of bumps in the road. But I've known Fabiano well for many, many years. And so your fun facts don't surprise me.
But it's interesting to hear that you were his second. I mean, because obviously your day-to-day comprises a lot more chess coverage. So how did you view it when he asked you to do that? Were you like, this is a unique world experience, or like, I want to get into being a second, like this is my new path?
It was the unique world experience aspect. And it was fun. It was something that I thought that I was not going to be equipped for. And maybe based on his results, I'm not equipped for it, though I don't think it was really, kind of an opening fall. I think it was just happenstance. But either way, it was a great experience. I learned a ton, and it gave me insights firsthand into how top players prepare, because I think that we all, kind of fantasize, what would that look like? What is that like? Do they just, sit and press the space bar, which is a code for using the engine and just getting the next move? And it's much more complicated than that. There's certainly a lot of practicing variations, not just looking at the top lines, but working through all sorts of things that interest you, not necessarily things that just you see on screen. So I obviously won't dive too much into what we did. And it was, again, a short experience. So I don't want to pretend like I have any experience training the best players for long periods of time and help them become the players that they are. But I, of course, when you work with somebody like that and they trust you, it's an honor. So I do not take that experience for granted.
Yeah, must have been amazing. And let me ask you, Robert, I don't know Fabiano personally, of course, but for some reason, contra what I was saying about Nepo, to me, I don't question Fabiano's motivation. I feel like he's been I just have the feeling that he's been preparing for this, gearing up for this, will be ready to go, really wants it. As someone who's actually friendly with him, does that square with your impression?
Oh, for sure. Right. The guy has social media, but you don't see him posting on it. He could become a successful streamer. I mean, everyone loved his commentary during the World Championship. It was a blast covering with him. And, I learned a lot just by hearing him talk about the games and everything, and living with him for almost a month. So he is motivated by the fact that he loves chess, and he is always trying to improve. Sorry, Fabi, in advance, but he's always watching the commentary that I'm doing because I get messages from him about
nice.
it. So, not to put you on the spot, buddy, but he loves the game. He truly loves the game. And so he doesn't need any sort of external motivation. Ever since he was a kid, he kind of lived and breathed chess, not in the way that he doesn't have interest. We just talked about his music, and he loves movies. I think for Fabiano, there is no question about that. People can question his form in recent years, and maybe that's fair. I think that he'd be the first to admit that, he's had some struggles, some bad tournaments. Of course, you mentioned Rustam Kazimjanov. That was very public that they no longer are working together. And I don't have insights into that. I'm not, hiding anything. And if I had something to tell, I wouldn't say it because it's not polite and not correct, but I don't. So I don't know all the ins and outs of his training regimen, but I do know that he takes every event seriously. And also, I think he has silenced many of the critics, because if we look at his recent blitz and rapid performances,
That's a good
Not
point.
so bad when you consider that his blitz rating is currently higher than Magnus Carlsen's.
Exactly. Yeah. Just speaking of fun facts, just amazing the progress he's made, and obviously, I think that story was overblown to begin with. Now, Robert, I got to follow up on this one. The fact that he's texting you during tournaments, it doesn't surprise me. He's doing so during top line events, but something like the I am not a GM, is he texting you during that as well?
Yeah, no, he really loves himself a good chess show, and he is for sure.
That's funny. Sounds like it's a lot of texts.
Not to again blow up his spot, but yeah, Fabi's always watching. He's big brother.
That's great. It must be a strange feeling. I've wondered about that before with the top players, because chess is such an insular, small world that I do feel like, they can't help but watch a lot of these events, but it would be a bit overwhelming for them to pop in the chat. So I've often wondered how they handle those situations.
Yeah, I think for their own benefit, staying away from the chat often is, I don't even read the chat when I'm commentating. So I couldn't advise anybody to go in there and start chatting. But hey, if these candidate players want to come in and talk in the chat, I will start reading their messages.
Okay, excellent. All right. Next up, Alireza Firouzja, 18 years of age, rated 2793, number 3 in the world, was number 2, representing France, originally from Iran, of course. And my fun fact, Robert, is he started chess at the age of 8, which is the latest in the field, which is interesting because now it's like he's sort of the brightest prodigy. But started the latest. But obviously, such a fascinating chess player, such a dynamic player. What do you think, Robert?
Yeah, actually, if you don't mind, I'm going to sort of merge him and Fabiano here for a second, because he's never beaten Fabiano. Mm-hmm. And this is going to segue into my thoughts about Firouzja and his chances. But Fabiano has quite a good record against the field. So Firouzja's never beaten him. Radjabov has never beaten him. And Duda has never beaten him in classical chess. He also has a winning record against Hikaru. And I didn't look into the specifics, but I'm sure some of the games that they played were maybe when Fabiano was a bit younger, because he is a few years younger than Hikaru. But still, that's very close. It's 7 wins for Fabi, 6 for Hikaru. So I believe the only players Fabiano has a losing record against is Ding Liren, who, if I'm not mistaken, won 3 straight decisive games between the two, including at the Candidates in 2020. But my favorite game between them, Fabiano, was when Ding beat him in the 2019 Sinkfield Cup, I want to say. That was a really nice game where it looked like it was a small edge, and Ding was able to convert it. But okay, now it's Firouzja time, because that's who you brought up. I think that Alireza just doesn't have the experience. Mm-hmm. And that doesn't mean that he cannot win this tournament, but you've never beaten Fabiano over the board. You haven't played all that many times. And he gained a ton of rating. He is extraordinary. I love watching Alireza Firouzja play chess. You tell me he's in the tournament, I'm watching. Because he has this fearlessness to him, this hunger. He is striving to be the world champion. But, and this is a pretty big but here, has he played 14 games in a row against 2750 plus competition? I don't think it's possible, given his recency as a top level player. So he won the Grand Swiss. He did lose to Fabiano in the Grand Swiss, but he won that tournament. But if you look at the opposition, it's not 2750 after 2750. And as somebody who's not in that rating caliber, who is lower rated than even the grandmasters he was beating, that is me saying everything with all the respect in the world. He is beating fantastic players, really strong grandmasters who may not have the rating of a top 15 player, but certainly can beat them on any given day. So can Alireza contend for 14 rounds in a row with both colors against the likes of Fabiano, Ding Liren, and the rest of the bunch? That is a big question mark. And that's why I wouldn't put him as the favorite. I would put him behind Ding Liren and Fabiano Caruana, and alongside Hikaru probably in that bunch. Rapport, again, a bit unclear for me on where he sits in my favorites in terms of rankings. I don't really have personal preferences. I try to be as neutral as possible as a commentator. But
come on, we know you're rooting for Fabi.
No, I even when Fabiano played for the World Championship against Magnus Carlsen, I really do not have a rooting interest, because I think that would worsen my craft. So we can talk about that later. But yeah, for this event, I think that Firouzja, he may be inexperienced. And then you can make the argument, well, there was a guy named Garry Kasparov who went in there and was in his teenage years and just beating everybody. And that's true. But the level of competition this day and age, I mean, it's not even clear that, well, first of all, Firouzja is lower rated than Ding Liren, but it's not clear that he's necessarily better than the players he's higher rated than. It's that close at the top. And without that experience that we've been talking about, whether it's playing a world championship match or playing the candidates and winning the candidates like both Caruana and Nepo have done, it is difficult for me to see him winning without having seen him win these top level events over the course of, a couple of years. Wow.
Well, I appreciate your candor there. I think you've convinced me. I mean, I didn't have him ahead of Ding and Fabiano to begin with. I don't consider myself such an expert prognosticator that I have a big difference from what the ratings models or betting markets would tell you in terms of how I assess people. But I do feel like, there's this, obviously his chess is electric. You love the storyline of this rapid ascension. So it is kind of easy to get pulled into the narrative of just this young talent just exploding, into the uber elite. But I think you raised some valid points. I mean, and there's also the question of like a common topic on my friends at the Chicken Chess podcast. What is he doing? Like, he's not playing these tournaments. News just broke. He's not. They're now suggesting he may not even play the Olympiad, which, okay, that's not necessarily going to give him the strongest competition in the world, but he's just not competing that much among other issues. So you definitely raised some valid points, Robert.
And if you don't mind, he did just play in the Grand Chess Tour in Romania, and his result was not particularly inspiring. So he was kind of in the middle of the pack. It never felt like he was competing for first place. And in the very last round, he was playing against his new compatriot, Maxime Vachier-Lagrave, and he lost with the white pieces. So on one hand, you could make the argument that he's getting his practice in. He's just trying to get himself situated for the all-important candidates, and he's hiding his preparation, all that stuff. But on the other hand, the results sometimes speak for themselves, where you look at a performance and you're like, well, he beat Dominguez, but he lost to Jan with the white pieces, and he lost to Maxime with the white pieces. 4 out of 9 against that field. He lost 10 rating points. Now people don't have to sit there and be like, well, he's the number 2 player in the world, so he has to be the favorite. I think people just like get into the moment a little bit too much, and chess is played over a long period of time, right? Ding Liren isn't number 2 in the world by accident. There's controversy there, to be sure, but Ding Liren has been around for a very long time. Fabiano Caruana, ever since his Sinquefield Cup days, and even before that, when he started 7-0 and had a historic performance, he's been around. When he played Magnus Carlsen, if he beat him in any of those games, if he took the lead once, he would have overtaken Magnus by rating. So rating is important, but it also has been just a purely upward trajectory for Alireza, and he gained a ton of points in the European Team Championship, I want to say, where he went 8 out of 9, and that was awesome. Like, I was watching the games and like, dang, he's not stopping. He's just, nobody can get in his path. But if you look through a lot of his ascension, it has come against players rated below 2,700. And as somebody who's below that rating myself, I have, nothing but good things to say about these players in terms of their chess ability. But it's just a different level. It's a totally different beast than playing against 2750s game after game. And you have no choice in the candidates. You don't get to float down to the 2680 who's overperforming. We mentioned Grigory Oparin, who in the Grand Swiss almost qualified for the candidates, right? And last time was Kirill Aleksenko. And that's possible because these are great players, but it's just totally different when you are playing against Duda and then Radjabov and then Nepo and then Caruana, then Nakamura, then Ding Liren. And sorry, I always miss somebody in there. But the point is, it's just a different level of competition. And these players have been around for a while. And so whether or not Alireza can handle it is something that will unfold before our eyes in Madrid.
Getting me excited again, Robert. Yeah, I can't wait to actually see it unfold. But yeah, I think you're pumping the brakes might be warranted, or we may need to go back and erase this segment 2 months from now. We'll see. Last but not least, definitely not least, Ding Liren, 29 years of age, rated 2806, from China, of course, number 2 in the world. And here's a fun fact. He told Sagar Shah of Chess Base India in 2017, when he won $60,000 for second place in the World Cup, he said he always gives his prize money to his mother. Who's sweeter than Ding Liren?
So Ding Liren is an extremely nice guy, and that is an adorable fun fact that I didn't know. So really, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, what can I say? It's hard to root against him when you read that.
I just was saying how I don't root for anybody, but when you say that, I mean, how could I not root for Ding Liren?
Yeah, and obviously a beast over the board. I mean, again, I don't feel particularly original here, but I do tap him as slightly the most likely to win it. I don't know if you would actually, I don't know if you're actually going to make a prediction, Robert, but more generally, what could you say about Ding's game?
The guy's an absolute monster, and he is multifaceted. He's not just one style or the other. I mean, none of these players are. You don't get to that rating by just playing attacking chess or positional chess. I think we like to lump people into categories, but when you're that good, you may have preferences, but you're able to be versatile. So, Ding Liren. Okay, how do I feel about Ding Liren? I think he's a great individual. I think he was put in a tough spot. I can't talk about the candidates without talking about how he qualified, which was as the rating spot, and he didn't need the rating. So that's why I'm more okay with it than I would have been. Like, he didn't go into these tournaments to win rating points. He could have lost 15 rating points or 20. I don't know how many.
For context, we should probably explain what you're referring to, although I know, of course, I can or you can. It's up to you.
Sure, I got you. So Sergei Karyakin was replaced in the field based on his stance, his pro-Russia invasion stance, and just many of the things that I certainly do not agree with that he said and were, I can hold my tongue, but reprehensible. I'll say that's a good word for it.
Yeah.
So there was a replacement by rating, and there was a requirement to play 30 rated games, and Ding Liren had only played 4. So within a month span, he played 28 rated games. So he even had a surplus of 2. But the tournaments were all in China. They were all organized last second. They included some familiar faces, repeat customers, if you will. But because he didn't need to gain rating points, he just needed to play games. That is why I have less of an issue with it. Now, the optics are horrible. Yeah. The other players were just drawing all their games. They were trying. I mean, unless there's this huge conspiracy out there that every single game was manipulated and they created draws in advance. It seems like the games were played. The games just happened to be draws. That's odd, statistically speaking, but it apparently happened. And Ding Liren beat up on a bunch of these guys and gained some rating points, like 10 or 8 or whatever it ended up being. So it's odd. Nobody likes the look of that. Nobody likes internal organization of like events where the incentives are misaligned. You have people who are playing Ding just so he can get the number of games. And do they want to win as chess players? You want to beat Ding Liren. That's the number 2 rated player in the world. From a perspective, you want that guy to be in the candidates. Are you supposed to beat him? Who knows, right? That's one of those things that make it a bit shady, even if I don't think that Ding did anything wrong, and I'm not really one for conspiracy theories. So going back to the over-the-board stuff, Ding, where is he, right? What is his level? What has his preparation been like? He probably thought he wasn't going to play in the candidates. Is he just now getting ready with his openings? He's looked darn good in the Champions Chess Tour. He looked good in those over-the-board games. Will he have the stamina? Will he have a team ready to go on out there and help him prepare each and every day for many, many hours for these other players in the field? He's been here before, right? He was in the last candidate. So this is not new to him. Unlike Firouzja, unlike Duda, this isn't his first rodeo. And in 2020, he got off to a terrible start. He lost his first 2 games. Now, he had to go through all sorts of loops and obstacles just to get to Russia to play. And I mean, it was a nightmare situation for most of the players. So I don't know if we can give him, he traveled farther. So I guess we could give him more of the benefit of the doubt in terms of that experience being so trying that it impacted his play. But yeah, I don't know. Ding Liren and his candidates before that, I don't remember him really fighting for first either. So yeah, he's kind of the favorite. I would probably, and I think a lot of people are giving Fabiano the slight nod ahead of Ding Liren. But Ding Liren, as I mentioned earlier, has a winning record against Fabiano. He has this really nice victory from the 2019 Singapore Cup. He beat him in from the white side of a position where Fabiano sacrificed a couple of pawns. I don't really remember the ins and outs of that game, but that was in the round 3, I want to say, of the candidates. And then also the second half of the candidates, Ding Liren became the monster that we know he's capable of being.
Yeah, exactly.
And he won that last round game against Jan, who had nothing to play for, but nobody really enjoys losing. And so, yeah, I think that Ding Liren has a lot of question marks. Just, how will the conversation impact him, if at all? Like, will the fact that he's there under these circumstances of internal tournaments that didn't exist until they were necessary, will people be talking about that? Can he just drown that out? We know that in sports, players are always drowning out the noise. You shoot free throws, there are tens of thousands of angry fans yelling at you to miss, and you just have to ignore them and shoot your shot. So yeah, Ding is fantastic. I love his style of play. He's a great mix of aggressive when he wants to be and tame, and can be a boa constrictor where he's like, if you want to play for a win, if you want to do something special, that's on you. But I'm just going to optimize my piece placement and you're going to have to deal with it. And that's no fun to face. And so I think that from a stylistic standpoint, he matches up with everybody in the field. I can't think of a single player that he should be scared of. And if I'm not mistaken, actually, the only person he hasn't beaten in this field in classical chess, he only played Firouzja twice and they drew their games, but the only person besides Firouzja with a lack of games is Hikaru Nakamura. He has lost one game to him, drawn a handful, and then he has never beaten Hikaru. So that's just an interesting thing to note, but he doesn't also have that many games against the other players in the field. Coming from China, maybe not always participating in the same events as them. I would have thought that some of these players have like 36 games against each other or whatever. He just seems to have 10 or fewer against everyone else in the field.
Yeah, you raise a lot of good points about Ding. I guess I just tend to focus on the sort of, well-known positive aspects of his game, of which there are many, but there are more question marks than it's. I think I have a tendency to discount them. Not to mention, we're recording this here on May 27th. Please let there be no COVID drama. But if there's going to be any visa or getting out of one's country issues, of all the places, China, of course, would seem to be the most likely. So let's just, hope that there's no news in that regard and that he can get there and compete above all else.
Yeah, that would be an absolute shame if at this late stage he wasn't able to participate. But we've seen that in the qualification cycle, right? Dmitry Andreikin, who had a really good shot of making it, was in that group, or supposed to be in the group A with Hikaru Nakamura and Levon Aronian, all of whom had great results to that point. And then he didn't play it. I don't know the reasons why. I don't want to speculate, but this is not a novel thing if he were not able to travel. I think he will be. I'm hoping so for sure. And Ding, like I said, along with Fabiano Caruana, I think he probably has to be your odds-on favorite. But I'm just sitting here trying to wrap my head around the lack of play in the last couple of years. There's got to be some rustiness there. You're going toe-to-toe with all the best players in the world on a daily basis, and that's not easy ever, but it must be even more difficult when you've taken a little bit of a sabbatical, not by personal choice, but by worldly circumstance. And I'm curious to see how that impacts him. But yeah, Ding Liren is awesome. What a fantastic player. I can name so many games, just drop them, and maybe I can tell you later and you can link to some of my favorites.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Ding is, I think he's somehow lesser known, right? Like the guy's number 2 in the world, and he might be the least known player in the field.
Well, I do feel like grandmasters like yourself talk about him in like hushed tones. Even Magnus, like he clearly has the respect of Magnus. And again, I've been talking on the podcast so much with guests about like will he or won't he with Magnus that I'm going to set that aside for this particular episode. But I will say I do think it would be interesting. Will he or won't he with Ding in particular, because he clearly respects him, and it's not someone he hasn't played him in a world championship before,
I'll
unlike
bite.
some of the other top players. What's
I'll
that?
bite.
You'll bite?
Just
All
for
right,
Ding.
go.
I can't get into Magnus' mind because I don't know what it is, but Ding Liren is a worthy challenger.
Yes.
And I won't necessarily say that about everybody else based on what we've seen historically between Magnus and them. And just, even if somebody beats Magnus in a match, I'm often just going to say, yeah, whatever. It's one match. Magnus is still the best player, right? I mean, he's just so much higher rated than everybody else and dominates every tournament that they play in. But Ding is a fascinating player, and he's gone toe-to-toe with Magnus. He beat him in that Singful Cup tiebreaker, which everyone talked about. Magnus, of course, still has the upper hand, but it would be a cool matchup and one that I would definitely, as a commentator, as a fan of chess, would be happy to see, just like many of the others.
Yeah. And again, not to derail too much into amateur tea leaf reading on my part, but it does seem like Magnus relishes a challenge, and he does appreciate that Ding could be a challenge. So, one of the many things that may unfold over the next couple months. Now, Robert, we've done an hour of gold on the candidates. I appreciate it, but I want to hit a couple other topics before we let you get on with your busy life. You ready?
Let's go.
All right. I appreciate it. So, number one, we've talked about it a few times already. I'm not a GM. As we record, I've mentioned many times, it's basically my favorite chess.com event. Something about, even though like people like Levy and Eric Rosen, amazing players, like, so strong and especially in the faster time controls, there's still an element of humanity when I watch them play that I don't necessarily feel when I watch the top 10 players. Do you agree with that? And do you have any theories on why that is, Robert, if you agree with it?
I will maybe not challenge it at all, but I'll contextualize it. That's a good way of framing it, I think, is with how I like to commentate and what I think makes a good commentator is
Excellent.
a commentator who is willing to be wrong. That's like the number one characteristic. And I've worked with so many commentators at this point. If you're just reading the engine, that's pretend, right? Magnus Carlsen is the best player in the world. He misses moves all the time. So why should we pretend like we can see everything? No, we should have fun going down variations. Now, if we show why things are right, that is informative, that's instructive. But if we show why things are wrong, that hits with most of the people who are watching. Because let's be honest, most people that watch chess are not grandmasters, are not title players. They love chess, they're aficionados, and they want to improve in some way. If I can leave somebody with a nugget of information, I feel like that's a successful viewing experience. So as it pertains to the I'm Not a GM Speed Chess Championship, you obviously have more mistakes because we're dealing with players who, they make more mistakes, right? It's a lower rated than Grandmaster, lower title, but still an exceptional player. So I love that we can showcase this talent. There also are more incorrect moves played, and those are going to be moves that align with the viewing experience. So I think it's kind of the best of all worlds. Fantastic chess, mistakes, but also just people who are like enjoying the experience and are not necessarily hyper competitive all the time about playing. So it kind of is the perfect storm.
Yeah, I couldn't believe that Levy was streaming his match yesterday. But on the other hand, like it's not big prize money, like his livelihood is his Twitch streaming and his YouTube channel. So as you think about it, it makes sense. But nonetheless, like I feel like it gets it. So many people end up watching that I was still a bit surprised, but it was compelling as always.
He said he actually plays better on stream. So after his first match, he said that he was going to stream the second because if he's just sitting and playing and not multitasking, he can get a little distracted or bored, which to some may seem counterintuitive, but that's his thing.
Okay. And as the announcer of something like that, Robert, did you approach it any differently? I guess you might call it. I mean, obviously it's more casual than like you flying to Madrid and getting dressed up and all that stuff. But how is your approach differently as a commentator for the online non-elite events?
I try at least to commentate every event the same way, whether I'm commentating for 20 or 20,000 people. I want to there's this balance of edutainment, if you will, but I always am skewed towards the educational aspects and less trying to entertain randomly. It's actually why I don't stream that often, because I, one, don't always find it very fulfilling, and two, I just prefer to focus on like helping people improve. And you can do that while streaming, of course, but I feel like also you have to fill the gaps and do things that you might not ordinarily do. So as it goes for the I'm Not GM Speeches Championship, yeah, I just try to be myself. I try to get into the games. I think that what's really important for me and my perspective of chess is I know how strong players like Levy, players like Eric are. I know what they've gone through to get to the point that they're international masters. And they take a lot of flack. In addition to all the praise they get for being amazing content creators, and as somebody who commentates with non-GMs regularly, I know that people will just be dismissive, will be harsh, will say like, oh, they're weak, even though the players are way stronger than everybody who's saying that, right? So I do take that into account, at least subconsciously, and I want to make sure that the audience, the fans, they understand just how good these players are, even if they're not holding the highest title in the world, even though they're not playing in the candidates. I mean, I'm not playing the candidates, right? So if you want to insult them for not being good enough, insult me, right? Like I'm okay with that. I can own that. But I think when there's a tiered system, a titled system, that I think that people do latch on, unfortunately, to the notion that some people just aren't that good because they aren't 2780. And I do keep that in mind specifically for events that don't feature the Hikarus of the world.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, to me, it's like laughable. I mean, just because, I mean, I'm bad enough, I guess you could say, to appreciate how good like Levy and Eric and the rest of the competitors are in I'm Not a GM. And I mean, it shouldn't even matter, but by the way, they basically have GM level ratings when it comes to speed chess. I mean, and jumping through the hoops to get the GM title, as has been discussed many times on this podcast, like that's its own thing, like that's a singular thing. It's a tremendous achievement. I think it's very admirable to pursue that. But, someone like my friend Greg Shahade just at some point decided like the juice is not worth the squeeze. And that's not to say that he automatically would have made it or that he necessarily is good enough. But it is like it's a separate thing from whatever it is that you're watching online, and certainly people shouldn't judge.
Yeah, and I like the way you put it, right? There's no guarantee that anybody, no matter how good they are, no matter how many, what the rating currently is or what it was, there's no guarantees that anyone ever gets the title. In fact, this is something I talk about whenever I'm asked about a young talent. I'm like, I'm not putting any expectations on these people, because just because someone's 10 years old and rated 2000, I'm just throwing out random numbers, doesn't mean that they have to be anything. Chess should be fun. Chess is not something that people need to kind of just get stuck thinking, am I going to be this rating? I'm going to be that. And I get it's easy for me to say because I already am a grandmaster, but I'm also not a particularly competitive person, which I think may shock a lot of people. I'm not playing chess because I want to crush everybody, and that could be in part one of the many reasons why I'm not better than I am, because I do think some element of wanting to crush the competition can be good for athletic competition, even if not always healthy outside of it. But I think that someone like Levy, someone like Eric, Greg, Lawrence, the rest of that whole field, some of them will become grandmasters, others won't try. And that's not for me to sit here and judge, because what does the grandmaster title get you? It gets you the highest title in the world. And if that's something you're pursuing, fantastic. I, of course, cherish my grandmaster title. I do not take it for granted. I worked very hard for it, but I don't think that it necessarily means anything from a worldly perspective. And so that people who are not a GM should feel badly about themselves, especially if you are doing other things and creating amazing content that millions of people watch. So I said earlier, I don't read the chat, and I don't read it for a reason, because even the random insults that are hurled are just not worth it. And I do appreciate the comments. People do extend those, but just to see people receive unnecessary flack and just negativity, it's not something that I think is beneficial for anybody.
Before you were getting me fired up, now you're depressing me, Robert. So we got to change the subject.
Let's do
it. So you mentioned you're not as competitive as some players, and I know that you're semi-retired. But reviewing your FIDE Grand Swiss 2019, Robert, you beat Lenderman, you beat Shankland. What was in the water? How did you manage such a performance? And will we see another at any point in the next year or two?
Okay, so now we're on to my playing. Let's see.
Yes.
Not going to make any promises. The Grand Swiss, both times I played in it. Oh, no, wait. The year before maybe wasn't the Grand Swiss. It was just the Isle of Man tournament. But in that one, I had the once-in-a-lifetime honor of playing and drawing Vishy Anand. And, that's an experience that, speaking of cherished memories, that's something that I will hold on to for life and means a lot to me because I have what can you say about Vishy that hasn't already been said? But the 2019 edition in Isle of Man, I had zero expectations and I started kind of badly. I drew my first game against Ruslan Ponomarev, which the result isn't bad, but I was worse the entire game because, I don't really know openings. And then I lost 2 games in a row. And then it's like, all right, well, I'm just here. Hopefully I don't do badly for the rest of the tournament. But it's not competitive for me in the sense that I wanted to go and beat anyone in particular. I'm competitive with myself. I love learning. And for me, there's nothing that replicates the experience of playing a long chess game where you're seeking the truth in the position. So, in fact, of those last 2 events that I played in, perhaps my most memorable game was my loss in the last round against Krishnan Sasikiran, a very strong Indian grandmaster. I had the black pieces, and I was just calculating this pawn break for like 6 consecutive moves. And I just remember that experience. Like, this first time, maybe it's okay. The second time, doesn't look as good. Third time, fourth move, okay. Yeah, maybe. Fifth time, okay. It's kind of getting urgent. Sixth time, now or never. And I didn't play it. And I find that experience satisfying. I lost that game. So you think, why is that your memory? Like you mentioned, I beat Sam, I beat Alex Lenderman. Those were fantastic results, and I enjoyed that. Who doesn't love winning a good game of chess? But I do think that game sticks to me the most, and it's a game I lost, and I don't reflect negatively on it. Like I really enjoyed that experience, and it helps that I don't play for prize funds, and I have my job as a commentator and I coach and all that stuff. But I think I was always kind of that way because playing for that competitive nature of beating everybody else, that must be exhausting. I don't know because I don't live that way and I'm not hardwired that way maybe, but it's something that I understand. I live as a commentator. I cover everybody. Some of these people are the most competitive people ever. And it's not just chess, right? You just, you sit and roll a dice. Like I can get a 4. Right. I can do that. Right. It's like, all right, well, I don't really care. But I love those events. I think that it's from a chess player standpoint, I don't like round robins. We might have talked about this in our previous podcast. I think it's a boring format. It's just not fun to see the same people play over and over again. There is some maybe selfishness in this that I wish that I could play in tournaments where I could potentially play Magnus if I do well, or if I just am, the middle of the field and I play him in the first round, whatever it may be. But having the opportunity to play someone like Magnus or Vishy is something that is extremely motivating for me. And I think a lot of grandmasters, whereas trying to squeeze out a win to secure a small prize, most grandmasters are not making their living playing chess, at least not that I'm aware of, because I don't know how that's possible, right? Even 2650 GMs, I can't imagine that there is a sustainable income made through those means. So the more events, and that's why I love the Rapid Chess Championship that I mostly commentate on chess.com, but I've had the luxury, the privilege of playing in a bunch of them. And I get to play at 10 minutes each game against the likes of Jordan von Forest or an Andrei Yesipenko. And sometimes you win those games, and that's really cool. Like it just proves to you that you can do it, but also just the experience is awesome. I mean, what player doesn't want to play people better than them?
Well, Robert, I love the growth mindset as you describe your approach to OTB chess. Has it, even in your younger, I would say more competitive, but it sounds like maybe competitive is not the right word. But have you always felt that way?
Yeah, I think that anytime I was really upset about a game, it wasn't necessarily because of the result. And when I coach people, especially kids, I never ask them, how did you do? I ask them, how did you play?
Hmm.
Because if you say, how did you do? It's like, I won. And then like they don't make that switch necessarily to, okay, I won, but I didn't do this, or I missed this, and maybe I should have seen it, or I was considering this. They then get in their head about the result. And so for me, the process is far more important. I'm always into the why of things. I studied history in college, right?
Yeah,
Why things are the way they are, how we got to a point. Those are important questions philosophically and also specifically to the game of chess. So when I was younger, I think we always like to think well of our younger selves, but I don't really remember like that drive to do chess all the time. In fact, when I was in like late elementary school or early middle school, I told my parents, like, I'm not doing chess all my weekend. I'm going to go sleep over at my friend's place. I don't know if I really had the power to make that decision solo, but
right.
it happened. Right? I was like, okay, I'm not just going to play at the Marshall every single day of the weekend, every weekend, or have lessons. Like I have other interests to this day. So yeah, I think that while I love chess, it being the sole focus of my life wouldn't be good for me. And I also think that I just don't have that urgency that others do.
Cool. Well, I think I think it's admirable, and it's nice to hear that you did accumulate some experiences such as drawing Viswanathan. So, when you had that OTB encounter, circling back to it, Robert, did you get a story to go with it? Any post mortem? I mean, you guys have probably at least exchanged pleasantries before, but what was it like to actually play Vishy?
Yeah, it's a lot different. I first met Vishy in person, I want to say 2012, maybe. We taught at camp together in LA. And so we were both instructors and dinners and stuff like that. And we've known each other over the years. We have a very friendly relationship. It's not a close relationship. We just don't know each other that well personally. But I would like to think mutual respect. Obviously, I have a ton of respect for him, and we've commentated together. But playing him was awesome. I mean, I went into that game. I walked to the tournament hall, and I sat down, and I didn't know what I was going to play. So I played the French defense, even though
Brave. Yeah.
I am very anti-French defense, as I joke about or half joke about during commentary all the time. But I figured it was the opening he doesn't play against that much. So why not? Let's try it, right? Like, Vishy, according to everybody, knows everything. So why not play the French defense and see what happens? And it, probably caught him by surprise to some extent. And I played I think, a very good game where I was up a pawn in the end game. And yeah, we had a post-mortem briefly, just talked about the position and things like that. But yeah, we just went on our way afterwards and continued with the tournament. But yeah, I definitely, that memory is just imprinted in my mind. And yeah, it was awesome.
How well do you know the French defense? Do you feel like it's one of your like better black against e4 openings, or were you just like whatever, he won't?
It was a whatever. Yeah, no, it's not something that I played. I play it online, occasionally on Blitz or whatever, but I have not studied the French. I don't promote the French defense. If you have French defense listeners here, I'm both sorry and not sorry. You're still welcome, every single thing I do, but yeah, just that light square bishop, man, come on.
Yeah, it's
There's
not my
better.
favorite. I don't like to play against it either, though, so I have to admit that. But yeah. All right, Robert. We're almost done here. This has been awesome. No surprise there. I did want to talk a little bit about the Global Chess Championship, the online event from chess.com, which of course will be culminating with a World Championship IRL. So do you know yet? Will you be commentating that? Are you going to play in the Global Chess Championship? The championship will be in Toronto, October 29th.
Right. So I'm trying to think how much I'm allowed to tell you, or if I just leave this hanging so everybody can wonder. I guess I'll just say whenever there are big chess events, and in particular big chess.com events, you can likely expect me to be covering it.
Okay.
Whether or not I'll play, that remains to be seen, but it seems awesome. I mean, an opportunity for anyone to get involved. Obviously, if you are not a highly rated grandmaster, the chances of you making it very far are not super high. But I think, as I was mentioning before, like the opportunity to play against title players if you're untitled, or if you are, let's say, a FIDE master playing against grandmasters, that's always fun. That's always a good experience. And the event itself will be great. I'm really looking forward to it. I need to quickly see what's out public and what I can and can't say. Okay, no, I see it's already public. So yeah, there will be qualifiers, and then there will also be 32 invitees. So the knockout will be 64 players, and you'll expect many of the invitees. They won't come as a surprise, just top players, legends of the game, young talents, and then others will work their way through and qualify. So I think having an in-person final is very exciting, especially for rapid chess. Classical chess is always in person. Playing classical chess online, some people do it. I definitely can't. Staring at the screen for that long and trying to concentrate is immensely difficult for me. But I think the live final will be really something that people will have a good time at and good time watching, because while we see players duke it out online all the time, and that still is exciting. Like, I love rapid chess. I love commentating rapid chess, but that in-person element, I mean, Ben, you've played in many, many chess tournaments. There's something there. There's like a certain magic and an aura there that is just, you're there, and there's really no other way to describe it than experiencing it, right? Where like, the intensity of the moment, you could feel the players, even though they're just sitting in their chairs, you can just feel them stressing and maybe squirming, excited. So the global championship, by the end of it, will feature, I'm sure, the who's who of chess, and it will take place in person. So that's just another exciting event to add, and the prize fund is huge, right?
Yeah.
I forget what the first place prize is. No, I see here $200,000. Second place, $100,000. Yeah, that's something to get excited about, and injecting a lot of money into the chess community.
Yeah, and this is OTB with a chess set, not like Battleship style where they bring their laptops, right? Because I think there's merit to both formats, but I believe there's an actual chess set involved here. Is that right?
If I am not mistaken, the finals, the top 8, when they meet in person, will be with a physical chessboard. And, it's, I think, what the chess players themselves, I mean, they like grabbing the pieces. Of course, playing online is good and fun, but especially with increment. Like, I think blitz chess, when you're like flagging people, that's chaotic over the board. But when you have increment, you're used to playing with a board and with the clock. So yeah, I'm happy about that. And I'm just happy about the event because it's really a lot of money, and the chess world, I think they eat up big events, and whether it's the World Championship, the candidates, or an event like this, I think it's a really exciting time to be a chess fan. As much as people say, oh, the boom is over, not every single person will remain in chess, but I think a lot of people either came back to it or came to the game and are here to stay.
Well said. Yeah. And of course, if listeners get verified, pay their $15 or whatever it is, you can try your luck against these monsters. So Robert, last topic, you've mentioned previously in our conversation, you're an avid reader, lots of interests outside of chess. So I'm just curious, like, what informs your approach to your craft commentating? Like, I know you're a sports fan as well. So like, is that something you're still working on? And if so, how do you work on it?
Something I am always working on and will always be working on, because getting complacent, that's not good. Perfect is the enemy of the good, as the saying goes. So there is that. But I am somewhat of a wannabe perfectionist. I sometimes slack on that aspiration, but I do hold myself to an extremely high standard. And, if I make a mistake, not a chess mistake, like that's fine. But if I sometimes slip up with my words or I stumble, it's not ideal. But at the same time, I think it needs to be understood that as a chess commentator, we are talking nonstop, because there's always something to talk about that pertains to the game. I love basketball. I've watched all these playoff games, not much of games as we were saying earlier, but it's not like you can predict. Once Steph Curry hits a three, you can't predict what Luka Doncic is going to do on the other end. Like, you can't map it out. You know that they're going to try to score, but you can't say, here is the opening that was played. Here is their history in their 8 previous games. This is the first time this opening was chosen. Here's how this opening usually goes with 6 different sub-variations, and then you go to a different game and you come back. All right, here's what's happened since we last left off. Here's my assessment of the position. We have the eval bar off the side. And by the way, we don't look at moves. At least I don't look at moves when I'm commentating. I think that, I've said this now numerous times, being wrong is a good thing, or like the accepting the possibility of being wrong is a good thing. You don't want to always be wrong. Then you're probably not a very good commentator. But so I have the eval bar off to the side because I have no choice in that matter. But the moves are off. So I think that being able to map out everything means that you're talking a lot, and that can be super exhausting. Something that people don't know, for instance, from the World Championship, is I had really bad bronchitis.
Oh, wow.
To the point where I was holding in my coughs that I had muscle strains in my chest, and I had to go to urgent care.
Jeez.
So it takes a lot out of you. Fabiano even was saying he was just wiped every single time. This is more exhausting than playing. I don't know if he would swear on that, but he, those words were uttered out of his mouth. And I was holding in my cough. So of course I was getting COVID tested. I'm, very conscious about that. And of course, want to be respectful to the people I was working with, and it was just bad bronchitis, but I would sort of have a tell with the producers, and they would either focus on Fabiano and Danny, or take us off screen altogether, and then they would mute my mic, and I would go upstairs where we were, and I would cough.
Jeez.
And then they would talk for a couple minutes, and then I would just join back and be like, Danny, I agree with what you and Fabiano are talking about, but whatever. So I do take it very seriously, and I don't want to miss a moment, and I try to bring energy at all times. And I'm not injecting energy just for the sake of it. I love chess. When Danya and I commentate together, and he's these days my most frequent commentator that I work with, we both love chess, and his passion for chess is, probably unrivaled. That guy is a historian. He's obviously a top level player, and he is an amazing instructor, but you can just feel his passion oozing out of him every time. And I'm maybe, I'll give him the nod in terms of being a little bit more passionate, or in love, obsessed, whatever you want to call it, with the game. But I also love teaching chess to people. And so when we commentate together, I think it's just the whole is better than the sum of its parts, almost, where we just both authentically love the game. And so I mentioned the willingness to be wrong, but also just a true love for the game. Those are maybe the most important aspects of being a commentator, because people latch on to your enthusiasm. That's what I found. Whereas, if it's your true self, if you're authentic in your appreciation for the position, and something that I really mean is that every position is interesting to me. There are times, of course, where, it's an endgame that you've already looked at for 20 minutes and you're sitting and waiting, which is why classical chess can be a bit tough to commentate on. But I find every position to be interesting for the most part, because there's something different every time. If they're making their little Berlin draw, well, okay, that's not interesting because we've seen that one there. The players, they love to do that just to make their quick draw. But by and large, every single game of chess is unique. And so trying to decipher the differences in the position, that's really fun for me. And you can call me nerdy. Sure, I'll take that. It's a compliment these days. I know that. Queen's Gambit came out.
Yeah,
exactly. Nerdy's cool.
Get with the times.
Get with the times. I read a lot. I commentate chess for a living. I like trivia and, all sorts of other games and crosswords and things like that. So I own it. I'm fine with it. I know who I am. But at the end of the day, you can't spell chess without Hess. So,
exactly.
I'm going to keep on going.
Excellent. Yeah. And shout out to Danya. He does do an amazing job. Just fun to watch whatever aspect he's covering chess. All right. Last thing, Robert, you last time I shook you down for chess book recommendations. One of them, in reviewing our prior interview, it turns out one of them was my system. I won't hold that against you, but I know that you're reading more commonly outside of chess. Do you have any more general book recommendations for our listeners?
Thankfully, you asked me a non-chess book, because before I'll out myself here. Before we started recording, I told you I've read like 3 chess books in my life. So
right.
I promote the study of chess, and I want everybody to improve the way that's best for them. And for a lot of people that's reading, I just have not read chess books myself. So books outside of chess that I've enjoyed. Well, I'm about to start. Well, I don't want to advertise random books, but I have like an eclectic taste. I do like historical fiction a lot. I'm always in the middle of 3 books. So I'm reading, slowly reading this really long biography on Frederick Douglass. I have a World War II book I'm reading. I just read this book, Clara and the Sun, which is like sci-fi dystopian. I read.
Thumbs up or thumbs down for Clara and the Sun?
Thumbs up.
Okay.
Yeah, thumbs up for sure. And I'm in a book club, so again, I'm a nerd. I own it. I'm happy with it. But I read a lot. So when I'm not playing chess and I'm not hanging out with my friends or whatever, I'm often just reading and enjoying that. And I have and sports obviously, but I have a lot of interest, and it's great that chess is blowing up, because now I get to meet even more people outside of the chess world who like chess. So that has expanded my horizons, and I would say a lot of people's horizons.
Yeah, I know you've been with Danny to the Sloan Sports Conference and stuff like that. What is your biggest celebrity that you've met through chess?
Oh gosh, well, I'm like a private person. The people I've coached, I don't coach them on stream. So right. Via PogChamps, some of the very biggest streamers that I've coached. I guess everyone knows I coached the streamer Ludwig, who is now one of the biggest streamers on YouTube. But who is I'm not going to name drop. It's just not in me. I'll tell you off air, but
okay. Yeah.
I've had the pleasure of making acquaintance with some extraordinarily high profile people. So I'll just say that.
Interesting. Shout out to Barack Obama. All right. Okay. Very, very last one. Since you punted on that one, do you ever get recognized in New York City? Most places, I'm guessing you're safe, but in New York City, it wouldn't shock me. So
great question, especially for this week. So I was hanging out with Anna Kramling the other day, because she's in the States.
Right, yeah.
And we were having this exact conversation. She asked me, how often do you get recognized? Because we've just been talking about streaming and all that stuff. And then, I don't know, 15 minutes later, someone comes up to us and is like, can I take a photo with you? Now, this is late. It's New York. You assume people might be drunk or high or whatever. And maybe this person was. And I was like, why? And I don't want to be standoffish. New Yorkers have a bad rap, and I'm not trying to add on to that. But like I said, you don't know what people are up to. When someone asks, can I take your, let me take a photo with you? That's not really an intro that makes you think, oh, these people recognize me. It's like, maybe they're up to something and just cracking jokes. So then I was like, why? And then this person's apparently cousin is like, oh, this is not who you think they are. Sorry to bother you, whatever. And the guy goes, no. I love chess. That's GM Hess and Anna Kramling. So
okay.
That happened. And I was telling Anna that I don't get recognized that regularly. But when I do, it happens multiple times in a week. So that happened on Tuesday, I want to say. And then today's Friday. Yesterday, I was just walking, and this couple is like, oh, excuse me. And I thought they were going to ask for directions. And they're like, oh, I'm a huge chess fan. I love your commentary.
Nice.
Can we take a photo with you? So this week alone, it's been 3. Wow. And then it won't happen for a stretch of months. And then it will be 3 in a week. So it's very weird. And maybe it's just me making up, random facts here. But that's what tends to happen to me, is I just go unrecognized for a while. I live my life. The people who recognize me are just my friends. And then when I'm recognized, it's just nonstop for a couple of days, and then it blows over, and I get to live my peaceful life off air. For somebody who is on camera all the time, I do not like being on camera. So that's a fun fact about me.
Yeah, you strike me as someone who wouldn't want throngs of people following you around either. So it's probably an appropriate level of recognition.
Yeah, I think that especially in this day and age, and not just chess, right? Like with all this access to people, there can be in the streaming community, always these talks of parasocial relationships where they feel they know you and you don't know who they are, right? They're just a random person in the street. That's not meant disrespectfully. It's just true, right? They have watched hours and hours of your content, and so they know something about you, and they're just someone you just pass in the street now. So it's for me, it's a bit uncomfortable just because I have no aspirations to be famous or be known. Like I don't post on social media. I don't stream that often. So even when I'm recognized, it can still be a little bit uncomfortable. I try to be, forthcoming and give people a photo or whatever, but I'm also, protective of my space and of my time because, unfortunately, I think people have experienced way more than I have in the content creation space, but you can unfortunately run into people who demand a lot more of you than you are willing to give. And it can veer from friendly fandom into uncomfortable, like, okay, now this person is kind of like not leaving and it just doesn't feel good. So of course, many, many, many people out there just want to say hi, maybe want to snap a photo. But I just feel like, and I experience this on a very low scale, but I'm sure real celebrities, A-listers, right? Taking a photo with a fan, maybe it feels good to be recognized and have a fan, but that photo is for the fan and not for you, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm never going to look for the photos that are taken of me. So I think about this often. And, obviously we just had this whole Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial and everyone is just watching it nonstop. And to me, it's just kind of uncomfortable. It's like, it's people's private lives and, I don't want to get into a conversation with the judicial system, but it just is one of those things that I think about often about how I present myself and how I try to be very honest. And I don't, whenever I stream, I'm actually very clear. I'm like, unless you are my friend in real life, like no one in this chat is my friend. And it's like a running joke where it's like I'm coming after my chat, but I just don't want any misconceptions because we do live in a time where, unfortunately, there are a lot of people who do, seek refuge in the internet in ways that are maybe not super healthy for them and may make them feel that there's a situation that isn't exactly how they perceive it. So, again, not to make I was supposed to end on a positive note, get you excited. And now I'm once again going down the sad rabbit hole.
Okay, so we'll end with one final positive thing to say about the candidates. What are you looking forward to most, Robert?
I think the fact that we don't know who the favorite is, that's really exciting. And last time there were just clouds hanging over the field when, Radjabov pulled out the last second and MVL was able to make it. And then they stopped halfway. It just didn't feel like a tournament. It felt like two very distinct events that were like almost on a foreign planet because the whole world was unfortunately dealing with a pandemic, and it was and still remains something that we need to keep our eyes on in a sad situation. But I think this time around, the event taking place in Madrid, the host, the Palacio Santona, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, the Madrid Chamber of Commerce there, it is beautiful. It's like artwork on the walls. It feels regal. It feels like a place where chess players are respected. They're held in high regard. And that's not surprising because of how much Spanish culture and Spain loves chess. But I'm really excited to be a part of that. I mean, I've been commentating online for most events, and you get to now go to a major European city, one of the premier travel destinations in the world. You're surrounded by chess lovers, and we're all there for the same purpose, to see which of these 8 contestants can win and face Magnus Carlsen asterisk, if he accepts. But I just think that the Candidates is a really fun tournament. Like I said, round robin tournaments, for the most part, whatever, I can do without them. But this event in particular, everyone, it's first or last, right? No quick draws, none of that stuff. Like the players have to fight because who cares if you score third place? Nobody remembers that. Nobody in the field wants that. They want first place. And so I think that it could be the perfect tournament to get back to over the board where everybody cares, all eyes are on it, and we have 8 very worthy players who are taking part. And like I said, you don't know who's going to win. Will it be the youngster, the teenager Firouzja? Will it be Ding Liren, who, questionably even got entrance in the field? Will it be Fabiano, who gets a second chance at Magnus? Can he return to the 2800 plus form? Will it be Hikaru? And chess lacks sponsorship. It has historically. There are, of course, some sponsors that we're very grateful for, but Hikaru Nakamura, Magnus Carlsen, could you think of 2 bigger names in chess? Because I certainly can't. And so the eyeballs that would be on a matchup like that, and just the eyeballs anytime Hikaru plays, I mean, Hikaru Nakamura will be there, and he may be the number 1 attention grabber, the headliner in the sphere of the online fans. But for those of us who have been deeply ingrained in the chess world, he, in many ways, just one of a bunch, right? And that's said with respect for every single player because of their prowess, because of their hard work, because of their dedication to chess. But I can't even put into words. I know I'm rambling here, but I can't concisely sum this up and be like, this is why I'm looking for the candidates. It's everything all at once. Just the stress, the excitement, the just joy of being in an environment where people love chess. And I will be tired, I promise you that, because I give every ounce of energy into my commentary, but I will not take a moment for granted, and I will try to give the very best coverage that I possibly can.
There you have it. June 17th, 9 a.m. NYC time. Can't wait, Robert. Thank you so much. This has been amazing. You're getting me excited again. So I think that's a good note to end on. People, I think, know where to find you. So thanks for being so generous with your time, Robert. It's always a lot of fun. Always learn a lot, and always fun talking chess with you.
You as well, Ben. Thanks for having me.
Perpetual Chess is brought to you in part by aimchess.com. Aim Chess, of course, has an algorithm which